Kira, welcome back. ਇੱਕ ਵਾਰ ਫਿਰ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਦਾ ਬਹੁਤ-ਬਹੁਤ ਸਵਾਗਤ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਮੇਰੇ ਨਾਲ ਉਸ ਪਾਰ ਅਰੀਨਾ ਵਿਲੀਅਮਸ ਹੋ ਗਏ ਨੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕਿ ਲੇਬਰ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਮੈਨੂਰੇਵਾ ਦੇ ਮੈਂਬਰ ਪਾਰਲੀਮੈਂਟ ਨੇ. Arina, how are you this morning?
Hi, very well. Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you, actually. And thank you for all the good work you have been doing since even your first tenure. And welcome back to the Parliament, actually, in the second tenure.
Yes, it's really good to be back in Parliament. It's such a privilege to be returned by the people of Manurewa to serve for another term here in Parliament. And we're into our first week.
Excellent.
Pretty good mood here.
I was there actually when you had your first speech in the Parliament on another day, just followed by Rima Nakhle, your fellow MP.
Yes, I really enjoyed the maiden contribution of Rima Nakhle. She spoke about the area we love, which is South Auckland, and both of us are passionate advocates for South Aucklanders. And, you know, at a time when cost of living challenges have been facing our community, I think both of us will be focused on that.
Arina, you are actually people's person. What is your take on Treaty of Waitangi? I mean, looking at the coalition government and their recent statements about Treaty of Waitangi, how do you take it?
That's a good question and something I've been thinking deeply about over the summer break.
Yeah.
You know, when I went to the Kingitanga Hui, that was down in Manurewa near Hamilton,
Yes.
10,000 people came along that day, including 1,000 young people, you know, and those young people were talking about a future for New Zealand that had a vision, that was going in a direction which was fairer and more inclusive for people, and that also had an eye to an environment that we can all enjoy. It was inspiring for me as an elected leader.
Yes.
I think they were looking to their elected leaders for leadership, but I was looking at them and just amazed at the kind of leadership that they provided. That is what the promise of the Treaty of Waitangi is. It's for an opportunity for all New Zealanders, from whatever country you come from, to have a place here and to be able to work together for that kind of future. And so, you know, I see that as the role of Te Tiriti o Waitangi, not as, you know, something which is introduced by Parliament and ultimately is having a divisive effect on the debate. There has always been debate in our communities about what the principles of the Treaty of Waitangi are since 1840 when it was signed.
Yes.
In fact, when we look at our history and to 1840 to 1870, there was conflict because it wasn't being debated and discussed about how it should be enforced and about what it meant for the British Crown. So, you know, debate is good. And I want to bring more people into that, and I see that as my role as an elected representative, not only to listen, but to create those forums where we can have a discussion and to bring more people in. I love having those discussions, and if anyone is listening from South Auckland, please get in touch if you want to talk about these issues, because they do go to the heart of who we are as a nation. But it's, you know, the place for this is not Parliament over a bill which would essentially write Māori out of the discussion that we need to have.
Okay, well said. In the meantime, looking at the light rail project has been withdrawn by the young fellow. So what is your take on that? Because you are actually a member of the Select Committee for Transport and Infrastructure.
Yes, I'm happy to be a member of the Transport and Infrastructure Committee because there are some issues in South Auckland and in the Auckland network that we really need to work through in terms of our transport offering. So far, what we've seen from the coalition government is, you know, it's regressive. It scraps, it stops and it cuts. It doesn't have proposals for policy which builds up our city, let alone our transport network. So, you know, if they're saying they're going to get rid of the Auckland light rail network, that's their prerogative. The government has the ability to do that, but they need to be able to tell Aucklanders how they're going to address the transport challenges that we face. We need to be able to get around our city, to not be sitting in traffic, to have options for people to get off the roads if they want to. And so light rail and rail definitely plays a part of that, but that's not something that we're hearing from the Transport Minister. And can I just add that I was extremely disappointed as a South Auckland MP to see the cuts to the Transport Choices program that was led by the previous Labour government. It was something that came out of the Climate Response Fund. They have done away with that funding, which will mean that local projects which were happening in Manurewa to make things safer and easier to get around have been cut, like the crossing outside our Manurewa Sikh temple, which is a project which has been called for by the community for a very long time.
Yes.
We had secured central funding for that, and as the local MP, I'm outraged that we won't be able to continue with that because of decisions being made in this term.
Yeah, and there is a strong community lives in Manurewa right now, looking at the multiculturalism of your electorate. And also, in the meantime, can we talk about the Mill Road construction maybe in the near future? Are you hopeful about that?
Yeah, it's something I've followed closely. It's not something that the Labour Party supports, because we would see essentially what is a 4-lane highway adding traffic to the area around Manurewa and the top of Takanini with nowhere to go. So when you build those big highways, people use them with their cars, but they add into the network in places where it's not joined up. And so that's why I've been calling for a joined up plan for the transport network, rather than these individual projects which don't necessarily improve people's time to get to work. It might make it quicker on Mill Road to go from an area between Takanini and Manurewa, but it won't help people's overall journey times if we don't have a plan for the entire road and public transport network together.
Yeah, from last few days, I have noticed that you've been mentioning Kelvin Davis quite a few times in your speeches, even on your Facebook. Tell us more about how he's actually your source of inspiration.
Yeah, Kelvin Davis is the former leader of the Labour Party, and as both a minister and a member of Parliament, I think he has made an incredible contribution to New Zealand. But, as a minister, he served for 6 years in the corrections portfolio, and during that time he represented someone who was able to bring stability to what is a very challenging portfolio. He managed to both bring the public service into a space where they had a stable sense of leadership, and he communicated to the public what the government was trying to do and prioritise within that portfolio. That to me represents a great minister. But I can also tell you that from my own personal perspective, he's been an incredible mentor. He's a teacher by trade, and he's a teacher in Parliament. He always has time for people to talk through what we're doing, about how we discharge our duties to the community in a way which upholds the mana of members of Parliament and our communities that we serve. He's someone I'll miss, and I'm really sad to see him go.
I know, no wonder he's been in the news for good reasons. In the meantime, you've been keep saying that Labour is pushing back on more broken promises from the coalition government. What are the other promises they are not keeping up? Well,
when I think about the program of work that the government has launched into in its first 100 days, it represents regression. It's a 100-day plan full of scraps, stops and cuts. There's nothing tangible, nothing of substance, and nothing that will take New Zealand forward. When we look forward to this weekend coming, celebrating Waitangi Day, with everyone around New Zealand enjoying celebrations that go to the heart of who we are, there's nothing in this government's plan that represents moving us forward as a country. They're scrapping the smoke-free legislation, they're scrapping the Māori Health Authority, they're scrapping affordable waters, and those are all things which will affect us over the long term. At a time when families in South Auckland already have too much on their plates, it's clear that National are playing politics with blindfolds on and ignoring the most glaring issues faced by everyday Kiwis. It's a shameful decision to dial back our smoke-free laws in the scramble to pay for tax cuts for a wealthy few. I think that points to them having the wrong priorities and being in this game for the wrong thing. It also shows that they're out of touch with what New Zealanders want. I think ordinary families want to pay less for their healthcare, to have a health system which works and has availability within it and has capacity to deliver for those aspirations that every community has. But this decision about smoke-free will cost our health system billions in the coming decades, not to mention the many lives that will be put at risk. When we were in government, we also had a plan for affordable waters. Aucklanders listening to the show today will know that we've had closures all over the city and you haven't been able to swim in our beaches. National opposed that plan. They said they'd do something different, but they haven't told us now that they've been in government what they're actually going to replace it with. Instead, they're looking to the councils who are clearly saying to government, if we do not have central government help, we will need to put up rates. And that will affect people's pockets. That will mean that in a cost of living crisis, that ordinary families are having to pay more to their councils when we could have had a central government way of dealing with this issue.
Okay. Well, your kids will be back to school very soon. In the meantime, will you be attending Waitangi this time?
Yeah, my kids are back at school this week, and to all of those parents out there, I know how difficult it is. It's been a real scramble in our household to make sure everything's ready, but I'm so proud of my boy who's starting year 2 this year at our local school.
Cool.
I'll be going up to Waitangi and taking them along. I think
Wonderful.
It's an incredible opportunity for young kids to be a part of those celebrations of our National Day. You know, I was 1 year old when I attended my first Waitangi Day with my father.
Yes.
And I don't remember that, but it was an important part of, I think, bringing me into his world, and so I want to do that for my kids. I would encourage anyone who's listening to make a plan to be at Waitangi for Waitangi Day, get to see a side of the pōwhiri, which is the welcoming opportunity of politicians into the whare runanga up at Waitangi. It's such an incredible thing to be a part of and to witness. Every time we do it, it feels historical to me, because it's this opportunity to check in with ourselves about, are we on the right track? Is this the kind of New Zealand we want? And there will inevitably political issues of the day that dominate the headlines, but it's actually that feeling of being able to have those conversations in the first place, which you miss from the news, which is the most important part of being involved.
Excellent. Well, keep up the spirit, and thank you very much for your time and wisdom of your knowledge. Thank you.
Thanks so much for having me. Ka kite.
Ka kite anu. Thank you. This is ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਜਾਣੇ ਪਛਾਣੇ ਚਿਹਰੇ ਐਰੀਨਾ ਵਿਲੀਅਮਸ, ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕਿ ਮੈਂਬਰ ਪਾਰਲੀਮੈਂਟ ਨੇ ਮੈਨੂਰੇਵਾ ਤੋਂ, ਔਰ ਮੈਨੂਰੇਵਾ ਤੋਂ ਮੈਂਬਰ ਪਾਰਲੀਮੈਂਟ ਹੋਣ ਦੇ ਨਾਤੇ ਕੁਝ ਹੋਰ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਵੱਖ-ਵੱਖ ਜ਼ਿੰਮੇਵਾਰੀਆਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਸਾਂਭੀਆਂ ਜਾਂਦੀਆਂ ਨੇ। ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਟਰਾਂਸਪੋਰਟ ਅਤੇ ਇਨਫਰਾਸਟ੍ਰਕਚਰ ਦੇ ਮਾਮਲੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਸਿਲੈਕਟ ਕਮੇਟੀ ਹੈ ਉਹਦੇ ਵੀ ਉਹ ਮੈਂਬਰ ਨੇ। ਇਸ ਤੋਂ ਇਲਾਵਾ ਉਹ ਸਪੋਕਸਪਰਸਨ ਨੇ ਬਿਲਡਿੰਗ ਐਂਡ ਕੰਸਟਰਕਸ਼ਨ, ਕਾਮਰਸ ਐਂਡ ਕੰਜ਼ਿਊਮਰ ਅਫੇਅਰਸ ਅਤੇ ਸਟੇਟ ਓਨਡ ਐਂਟਰਪ੍ਰਾਈਜ਼ਸ ਮਹਿਕਮਿਆਂ ਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਉਹ ਬੁਲਾਰੇ ਦੇ ਤੌਰ ਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ 30 ਨਵੰਬਰ 2023 ਤੋਂ ਇਹ ਨਵੇਂ ਰੂਲ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਕੀਤੇ ਨੇ। ਔਰ ਦੂਸਰੀ ਵਾਰ ਇਹ ਹੋਇਆ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਨਿਊਜ਼ੀਲੈਂਡ ਦੀ ਪਾਰਲੀਮੈਂਟ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਮੈਨੂਰੇਵਾ ਹਲਕੇ ਨੂੰ ਰਿਪਰੈਜ਼ੈਂਟ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ।